Welcome everyone and welcome back to day 2 of the Saudi Workspace Summit. My name is Marina Merzian. I'm founder of Intellier and your chairperson for the upcoming Workspace Summit. So yesterday we took the first step in exploring how design can shape identity, community and sustainability in workplace. Today we will continue our journey by delving into the balance between local culture and global vision, an essential theme in a rapidly globalizing yet deeply rooted world. When it comes to keynote presentations, we will begin with Ben Corrigan's keynote, Collide to Collaborate, the necessity of human-centric social spaces in the workplace, where he'll explore how social spaces play a pivotal role in fostering collaboration and creativity. Later, Pallavi Dean will take us through her keynote, Psychology in Design, where she will explain how design choices impact our mood, behavior, as well as creativity. And finally, Garrett Hall will share insights in attracting and retaining the top talent. Each of these topics is about pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible, and today is also an opportunity to think deeply about how we create spaces that reflect our shared values while anticipating the challenges of tomorrow. So let's continue to think, innovate, inspire, and simply discuss. So having said that, let's start with our first keynote for today, titled Designing Identity, Local Roots, Global Vision, Designing with a Dual Perspective. So let me give you a bit of an overview of today's topic. 70% of global companies customize their workspace design to reflect their local culture. According to Gensler, adapting global designs to local preferences increases employee satisfaction by 30%. Some of the key takeaways from today's discussions will be for us to understand how to blend global and local design elements effectively, learn about the benefits of local approach to workplace design. Having said that, I would like to get can we get our panel? Exactly. Okay, so let's see who we're having today. Unfortunately, we do have some cancellations, but I would like to invite to stage Bart Leclerc, Head of Studio KCA from BSBG. Bart, welcome on board. Guray Oskay, Director of Architecture Design is Atolai, and Mark Torres, Managing Partner from XBD Collective.
Should I sit? That's okay. Very good.
Perfect, gentlemen, welcome on board. As I said, we do have some cancellations and we keep a track of time as well, but thank you so much for joining today's panel discussions. Obviously, this is our inaugural Workspace Summit, but before we start with the topic, I want to just kind of pick your brain about what do you think about the summit and why is it important that we have such a niche summit that really tackles workspace design in Saudi today. So Bart, maybe with you.
Well, to start me, I think it's really exciting at the moment to be in Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of things happening. I am the head of studio for BSBG here in Riyadh, where we're doing at the moment 11 big projects, and you can see that there is an enormous amount of work happening at the moment. Dubai is busy, but Saudi is even crazier than it was ever before. And you can see that it is very, very good to see all these very top talented people coming here with these and all these fabricators and all these people that provide really good interior design solutions. But sometimes it's really difficult to connect. And if you then get an opportunity to meet gentlemen like this in a place like this and then be able to have a conversation, it's a wonderful networking opportunity. So thank you for organizing this and thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Guray, from your side.
Thank you. First of all, on the importance of summits like these, any opportunity to create an environment for conversation, dialogue is extremely important. Yesterday there was a lot of talk about how we'll get to where we want to be in the near future. It's never a competition, it's more like a relay race. We'll get there together. So exchanging information, exchanging knowledge is extremely crucial in our line of work. So whenever there's a platform to share knowledge, learn from each other, it's very, very important. And touching on the importance of workspaces, like Bart said, there's an amazing amount of transformation there's a lot going on in Saudi. There are a lot of very important decisions being made. There are a lot of projects being developed, and workspaces are the incubators of these. Everything is born out of workspaces where people get together, ideate and create. So if we can create the ideal womb for ideas to grow, then we have a good thing going in the first place. So it is a very good place to start to create beautiful environments for productivity.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you. So, touching based on the workplace, and what I think is very interesting on the last 4 to 5 years is how it's evolving. It's not anymore a place with desks and chairs. It's a place where we connect and we talk. So I think from our side as well, what is interesting is changing the way that we design these spaces, and it becomes much more familiar, much more almost like a residential space. And I think that for us, we start to design the spaces different in workplace in the last 4 years. So I think it's a changing market, that it requires much more thought process than before, and then there are much more demands from the client to adapt to the new requirements and to what the people that are working in this space needs now. Now is the moment where they need to talk, and they want to change how they collaborate, and the place where they have to commute every day too. And I think that touching in locality, I think this index in Saudi is a bit different as well of any other place. So I think that being here connected to local designers, local developers, I think it's a great opportunity to be local in Saudi.
Thank you so much. And in a way, that is an aim of Workspace Summit, right? To be a platform for that kind of dialogue and exchange of ideas as well. Being mindful of discussions we also had in Dubai at Workspace Summit, and people told me, okay, let's not talk about COVID anymore, but COVID definitely brought a lot of disruptions globally when it comes to workspace and the way we work as well. So bringing that to that kind of local context, what are some of the changes that we're seeing now happening in Riyadh? Maybe Bart, we can start with you. What are those disruptions? What are those major transformations that are happening locally as well?
Well, you're saying to us, let's not talk about COVID, but I think COVID is unavoidable. We need to talk about COVID, because what COVID has done is actually quite interesting. In 2020, when COVID broke out, we were forced to work from home, and that took, in some areas in Europe, that took months and months. People couldn't go back to their offices, but here in the Middle East, I think we were a little bit quicker with getting everybody vaccinated, so everybody could return back to the offices really, really quite quickly. Yeah. I have to say, the governments here in the Middle East have been absolutely amazing with that. But one of the things that the employers have found out as well, they noticed that their employees working from home was maybe something, that was possible, but there was always this little bit of a mistrust. Mm-hmm. Are they really working? Huh? And you could see that there was a real focus after COVID. How do we get these people and entice them back into the office? Yes. And how do we make sure that they absolutely enjoy being back here and don't want to just work from home? And I think that has created quite an interesting dynamics. You can see in some of the designs that we're seeing now, a lot of places, they try to make it really, really a place where people love to be. So with very, very good layouts, with very nice modules, good entrance places. What I like really here in Saudi Arabia is the coffee shops that you always have. Wherever you go, wherever you come, you get absolutely excellent coffee and you get a water, and then you immediately feel, I'm in a really nice place here. I think I'm going to enjoy being here for a couple of hours.
So coffee culture, coffee is that bribing element, right?
It's working, it's working.
It's working.
Yeah, it is very much working.
Gure, from your side and the projects you're working on, what do you see as a big transformation and big disruption that's happening?
Well, one of the first things COVID changed was when people started working from home. Pre-COVID, offices and workspaces were also a shop window or places where you can present your company identity to the outside world. So a lot of companies went for the bigger, the better, the flashier, because it was important as a sign to the business world to show what your company is all about. And when employees started working from home and costs became an issue as well, companies figured out that, we could do with a lot less. We don't need all this real estate, we don't need all this area, we don't need all these meeting rooms. So they started moving into much smaller offices. And that brought within itself a great understanding of flexibility in workspaces. Now, there are no set meeting rooms, there are no set working offices. Every space within an office we can use for multiple functions, and that prepared a great platform for innovation for us designers in the workspace. And I can't deny that it also helped us appreciate everything great about working side by side, being far away from it for a while.
That human interaction as well. Mark, from your side.
Well, I really like the idea that post-COVID there were some spaces in the offices that obviously you could shrink because an office is used 60% by the workers, and obviously someone is working from home, someone is on holiday, someone is in a meeting. So you could take all these additional desks and just put some sofas or some elements that could be multi-purpose, and then change the dynamic because people could sit down, have a moment of a coffee break and talk to each other and bring back this small talk that is very key. Because people, when they go to the office, they want to talk to each other and understand elements that do not relate to work. You can have a work call and we understand that and collaborate through Teams, but you can never have these small conversations that we all appreciate about our work colleagues. And bringing these opportunities to have this negative space that is not a desk, is not a chair, is not a meeting room is very important, and this is the post-COVID action that we have to take on. These spaces that are different from working.
Okay, thank you. And I feel that we did have these challenges globally, right? It was rethinking office spaces on a global level. Now, bringing us back to our topic, and I just want to check one thing. Can you hear our speakers? All good? Okay, perfect, because we had some issues with sound.
I find it difficult to hear him.
To hear Mark a bit, yes, as well. But you can hear Mark.
But that's
just
probably
the audience?
because they have to...
Okay, perfect. Okay, I just wanted to cross-check. Perfect, yes. So just top it out a little bit. And
Sorry.
Then...
No,
is it
that's
better?
not you. No, that's much
okay.
better.
Yes.
The audience can hear. Perfect, that's
Okay.
great. So as I said, obviously post-COVID, these were some global tendencies, global challenges we had to discuss. Yesterday we had a panel, and there is a little bit of overlap where we talked about designing with brand identity in mind. So obviously we mentioned that there's a lot of global headquarters, global companies that come with a certain set of guidelines, right? So before we talk about the local companies, government projects, I want to talk about those global ones and the challenges of kind of bringing that local identity, especially in the Middle East, more specifically to Saudi. So maybe we can start with you again, Bart. So I know you're on my left side.
That's absolutely fine. I'm comfortable with that. I'll give you an example. When you're talking about these big international companies, they tend to go for the grade A offices, the really good qualities, beautiful finishes, lots of daylight coming in, very nice open spaces, easy to work there, very good, air conditioning and HVAC and very good lighting, all that stuff. But the problem is with these really, really high-end grade A offices is sometimes that they have got a little bit of a lack of identity. They can be quite sterile. You could be anywhere in the world. You could be in Tokyo, you could be in Rio de Janeiro. And by adding a couple of really nice things in there, which are really tying it back to the locality, to where you are, gives it a sense of, of location, I think that's really, really powerful. And it does a couple of things. It creates, first of all, that you've understood as an international company, you've understood where you are. You've understood, you've appreciated some of the design elements that are there in the local culture. So you'll be able to, because the quality is so high of your office, you'll be able to attract international talent, but you'll also be able to attract local talent. Because they come into your office and they will understand that this is a place, that is familiar, close to my heart. So I think it is very, very interesting if large international companies start adapting some of these local design features. I think it's great. So I really celebrate that.
And great, just looking through my notes, you mentioned it's important to identify that common denominator that kind of connects all the offices globally, but it's something that you also mentioned.
Yeah, that was a response to whether to integrate local to global or global to local. Rather than incorporating one to the other, I always am on the search for the common denominator. What ties everything together? The people, the people working there, the people who visit, the people who collaborate with them, of course, brand identity of the company that is using the office, and their clients, and where they are. There's something we appreciate about architecture is always how it has a very strong, good architecture always has a very strong connection with where it sits. We appreciate great architecture when it is a building that can only exist there, and only that could exist there. It is when we find joy in great architecture. That is not something we chase very much in interior design, although we should. And I can understand why big global firms would press hard to display their brand identity through their spaces, and that has been the trend with the birth of globalism, from the 80s forward, and that has always worked great with retail because you want to be instantly recognizable and you want to be instantly purchasable. But when it's company culture and you're bringing in local people to work with you and you're working for the local people, the workspace really needs to cater to local identity so everyone can feel safe and familiar and at ease to produce the best work that they possibly can.
Okay, thank you. And we can go back maybe later to your presentation from yesterday where you talk about that importance of defining that language you design and specifically to this region as well. Mark, coming back to you.
Well, I really recognize the company culture as something really important. So when an international client comes and says, oh, can we design this space, this workspace with local connection, it all goes back to company culture. How do you make this space be local? How do you recognize the local traditions? What is going to happen in this space aside of producing work that can be local and made local? So obviously we can design spaces and we can mimic locality, but what it has to happen is that the company has to have a local culture within the company with local people, with local traditions. So it has to come from the company itself. It cannot be only on the designer to say, yeah, just make this space local and look local. It has to be with the company that has to adapt to the local needs, the local traditions, and how people get together representing the local way of communication and being together. I do really appreciate the hospitality that you can see here in Saudi on coming to a place, being offered a drink, being offered a moment of connecting and sitting down together. And I think that the companies need to understand that it's not only us designing a space, it's them changing to make this company local as well.
Okay.
That is really important because when it comes not from the company culture but just from the designer, there's always the pitfall of any local design implementation to come off as a cheap gimmick. But it's never internalized by the company or by the community that it possesses, and it's a really tough balance to build.
It's that design trap. And also I wanted to ask you, and it's good that you mentioned cheap gimmick because obviously how many references to sand dunes can we have?
Apparently millions.
And it's also that a bit a broader understanding of what's the Middle East context, right? So now if we're going to put this zoomed in lens on Saudi in particular, for sure there is a challenge of identifying that specific Saudi language and what's that local context.
Absolutely, and you have to be really, some of these international people that are coming from outside, they have to be really, really careful also when they're doing the interior design that they don't get some of the details wrong. Because I see that a lot. Where they are using images and they've got, for instance, in their renderings, they've got the wrong attire, the wrong clothes. Yeah. Where you can clearly see they're Emiratis and not Saudis. Or when they are using something from the other side of the Arabian Gulf, some of the tile work, which is clearly not related to anything to do with Saudi Arabia. So they have to do their research well. Otherwise they get it horribly wrong. And if one image is wrong, it can really put off a client.
No, sorry.
I've noticed.
Would you like to add a comment on that? Wait, we'll get you a mic. Let's just keep discussion
you
going.
agree with me or not?
Yes, you can share your thoughts on it. Yes, and you can introduce yourself.
That was quite sharp because this is what we notice as local people, that they choose the images of Emiratis people and they put it in their renders. I'm like, okay, obviously he doesn't know Saudi well. So
Correct.
you noticed that? That was sharp.
Ooh. But also some other design details are sometimes really, really crucial as well. Some of the interior designers came up with these little uplights in the floor. And I said, you can't really do that, because if somebody with a dish dash walks over it, it almost like it lights up, almost like a lantern, like a lamp. It's not a good idea. So, but these things, if they're not being told about that, they don't think about it. And you agree, yeah?
Yeah,
Yes.
they won't notice that unless they experience that or they
Yes.
see the mistakes on real.
Exactly. Very good.
So, Correct from your side to add?
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a beautiful point and something we have lived through years and years. We did a project here in Saudi lately, and it was for NEOM. And the first presentation we sent, the first comment I ever received was, "This is not the NEOM desert."
And they recognize it instantly.
Instantly.
They say,
Not all sand is Saudi sand.
Exactly.
Not all horses are Arabian horses.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of attention to detail required. I'm not even going to get into cultural appropriation, but it is crucial that you get immersed in the culture you're working with. You understand everything there is to it, so you can actually design for it, and that design lives to be part of that culture inevitably. It's a very, very crucial element.
and we are usually a lead design consultant, so we work a lot with concept architects and concept interior designers. And the very, very first thing I do, please show me your slide deck so I can help you making sure that you have got all your images right. And exactly like you're saying, if you're photographing Wadi Rum and you're presenting it as if it is Saudi, if it is NEOM or Al Ula, they immediately recognize that's not it. Very, very interesting.
Thank you so much. Mark, from your side.
Well, no, I completely agree. It happens in all the GCC, where we do a lot of work in Bahrain, in Qatar. Locality goes to the country, and each one is different. So we have to be mindful of that, of the local traditions, how they will understand our design in the local market. Is important for us. We are international. We work in many countries. The locality and understanding the local culture is very important, and is the first step of the design.
Okay. I'll share one funny thing. 2 years ago, we did a strategy project around Expo, the upcoming Expo in Japan. And when you see these projects, because it's every 5 years, you don't notice, but we did a historical study of every pavilion design. And when you see them side by side, designed in 1985 by so-and-so, I'm not going to name names, and inspired by sand dunes, this design, you move on to the design in 1990, designed by so-and-so, inspired by sand dunes, and it's sand dune after sand dune, reducing every cultural inspiration point to a very cliche stereotype. There is a lot more in the culture of every country on earth, and if you just do the work, just get immersed in the culture, there are infinitely many things to be inspired from.
There's also, you have to be mindful though that if you're, for instance, looking at Dereya at the moment, where they're doing a lot of the hospitality projects there, it's a large area. It's almost like an entire new city. And everything is done very, very much strict to the Najdi architectural style, which is very, very specific for Riyadh. There's a couple of very, very strict rules that come with it, like for instance the size of the rooms, the way the palm tree leaves are used for the rafters, the way the courtyards are, and I'm actually feeling almost sorry for some of the architects, because it is actually the rules are are quite strict, but to actually get a lot of variety in it is actually quite difficult. And that's something that I've noticed. Architects are running out of ideas sometimes as well. So it's almost as if we're trying to look for a new interpretation of the nice architecture or some of the local elements. And I think we're struggling a little bit trying to define what that is and what it is that we like. As an example, for instance, when we started doing large hospitality projects back in the UAE, they started building these creative kingdom sort of creations with lots of green and these big structures, and very slowly started to evolve almost like a completely new architectural style, a hospitality style, which formed around 25 years ago in the UAE. And I think Saudi has got the same opportunity to do the same thing and completely reinvent the way hospitality should be, or offices, and then actually start sort of building on that. I think I think we should be a little bit open for that. I'm not sure if we can or if we're,
but when you mentioned about opportunity, when we look at obviously GCC as a region and everything that's been happening in UAE, that learning curve and experiences learned from UAE of what has been done right, but also what has been done wrong as well. But just going back to obviously we mentioned about obviously we're focusing on workspaces, and we mentioned about the global companies coming here and trying to identify that local design language. But I just out of your experiences, and I also invite the audience as well, if you can share some case studies as well and examples where you do work with the local clients as well. And, part of that local culture narrative is simply sitting down with them and understanding what's important to them to be incorporated in those spaces.
Let me think. I'm going to ask the gentleman next to me to
Well, to me, one thing that I notice a lot is when we take international companies, there are some guidelines of how they do workspace. And to be honest, we have to be bold enough to break these guidelines if we want to make it local. There is a lot of requirements in terms of meeting rooms, in terms of how they sit together, that potentially it would not work here, or it's not appreciated here. How you arrive and you have this grand entrance lobby, but it doesn't feel welcoming. It doesn't feel like you can sit down, be served a drink, wait for someone to walk you in. So I think that we have to change how we get these international companies to give us guidelines of design for workspace. And we have to, it happened in Singapore, it happened as well in Australia where I work, in changing how Google or other companies do work and give guidelines, because you have to bring locality, and all these communities work very different. So we have to be mindful of assessing what is required and what can be adapted to local trends and design and how they communicate. It's very different between countries. So when you talk to these international companies, the first question is to question the guidelines. I think that's something that personally I found very important.
And Gura, you mentioned that you work with some local clients here. You mentioned also NEOM and certain offices there. So having those discussions with your local clients, what are discussions that you have in terms of what's important for them to be reflected in their office space?
Obviously, everyone in the world is crazy about human-centric design, and human-centric design has two aspects to it. One is the physical relationship with people, with the physical environment around them. It's a very tangible relationship. What we value even more than that, because the first one is relatively easy, is the intangible version about the thing I talked about yesterday. What kind of relationship people form with each other, two, with their surroundings, and three, the way they conduct business. Although companies are global, their ways of working are global, when you start bringing in local people, the ways of doing business change drastically. Having a meeting in Finland is immensely different from having a meeting in Istanbul or in New York or in Riyadh. There are different cultural aspects to it, the way you sit down, the way you use a coffee table or a desk, or just a majlis, two sofas side by side, just looking into each other's eyes over a cup of coffee or lunch. These things differ differently, regardless of their global background. So what we do is we talk to as much people as possible we talk to everyone from very high-profile stakeholders, company founders, CEOs, to janitors, office workers, all the key staff, to people they work with, the people who will visit their workspace. And we try to create a very interesting map of relationships between everyone and the space. And once we get immersed into that, we can create we can identify all the qualities of that community. Then what we do is we translate that into space. At that point, space cannot fail.
Perfect. Right.
We have worked on a big office for MISC Foundation. It's the MISC Foundation headquarters. It's in a beautiful spot. It's right on top of the cliffs, and it's overlooking a very, very dry and very pristine wadi. And the place is so beautiful that you almost want the building to sort of disappear in the landscape, so you don't see it. It doesn't take any space. And what we've created is this triangular building with a beautiful atrium in the middle. And it's got the color of the stone that is all around it. And it's very formal. It's also the head office where His Royal Highness will be regularly, because he's the founder of the foundation. And there again, you've got an amazing huge coffee shop in the middle, because that's where everybody comes together. But you've got also all these amazing breakout spaces. You've got these, I don't know if anybody has ever been at the Hub in Misk City. It's this really large warehouse. And it's quite interesting. It's just almost like a shed like this. But it's quite interactive. It's got stages, it's got all colors. People really like to be in that space, isn't it? You can fill it up with 300 people and you can have a conference there, or you can just be there all by yourself and work away at a desk. I think it's quite an interesting space. So two completely different solutions for the same client, basically. That's quite interesting.
But I like what you mentioned about that natural landscape, because we always see, when we talk about workspace, there always has to be at least one panel discussion when we talk about the importance of biophilic design, and it's mimicking that nature. And I always say to people, don't look for pine trees in the middle of a desert, right? So that concept of what the biophilic design is, and that's also relevant to honoring that nature that surrounds that place.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Well, I don't have anything to add to it, actually.
Perfect. No issues. But I would like to kind of open up to our audience a bit. Any local examples, any project that you would like to share where this importance of a local context has been implemented well? I know, Ben, you have one project to share with us. So obviously, Blue House is working a lot in this region. So anyone else would you like to add a little bit on this topic as well? I'm putting you right on spot. So, but
thank you very much, guys. That was a really good panel. I agree with everything you've said, and I love the point that Garay said about COVID taught us. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
It's a little bit, yes, up a little bit.
Yes. I like the point that Garay made about COVID taught us that we actually like working with each other physically. Yeah. I think that was a really valid point. But also, I really like the point Bart made that it really is quite challenging to integrate whatever country you're in, not just regionally but around the world, local culture, heritage in a tasteful way, but we're running out of ideas on sort of tasteful, subtle ways of doing that. Yeah. And I think, going back to your point, Mark, I think the people who are going to use the space have to be part of that conversation. It can't be down to the architects and designers to sort of make assumptions on what local culture is. We can do our research and we can dig deep and we can do everything we believe, but the people really have to be involved in that conversation, because we do get things wrong sometimes in the architecture and design world. And I think it's the only way to do it, really.
Okay.
I agree, totally. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I don't know, it's really, what you said was really, really valid. He's having conversations with everybody that's going to use the building, from the janitor to the director who's having the corner office, from the people that are visiting. And I think that's absolutely crucial. You need to, because if you are making spaces that nobody wants to use and they're staying empty, you've missed the point completely, isn't it?
I'll give you one more thing better on top of that. When you include everyone in the design process, that creates a beautiful sense of ownership.
Correct.
And when you put when people are not the recipient, final recipient of a bit of design, but they're part of the process, they end up owning the process and the final product as well. So it becomes inevitably sustainable because they cherish that space they helped create, and they try to improve it, they try to make it work, and it stands the test of time that way.
And the funny thing is that probably about 20%, 30% of the people that are living in or working in that building are really, really surprised when you ask them, what would you like for your space? What would you like to have in this so that you enjoy doing your work? If you ask a janitor, okay, tell me about your work. What do you like about it? How do you want the space to be? I think he's going to be well happy that you've asked for his opinion. He's going to be very...
And the amount of valuable insight you get is incredible. Incredible.
I agree, yeah. You're right.
But that brings us to those challenges, because when we talk about workspace and when we talk about having those workshops with the clients, usually there's not enough time for that, right? That kind of pre-design stage where you do have time to sit with a client, and how often you do get a chance to do that process, to go through that process.
But if you're saying that, if you're doing your pitch and you're doing your pre-concept design pitch, and if you've been able to have 5, 6, 7, 10 of those conversations and you're able to present that as part of your design philosophy, I think it's going to absolutely wow. It's going to be almost designed by, how do you call it? It's almost, it's actually, I think it's a very powerful tool to really impress your client. I think they really appreciate if you dive so deep into that.
I wanted to touch base on that because when we design some of the workspace as well, it is important the different divisions. So when we interview the IT, when we interview the designers, when we interview the managers, each one have different feedback to us of how do they work. At the moment we think that is a table and chair, but they communicate, they work different, they need different levels of noise, of communication. Some of them, the IT guys or people that want to just be with themselves or have moments to talk to each other, but in smaller groups, bigger groups of 8 to 10 people, so it's all different. And what we do as well, we give this feedback later to the manager, so this is sent back to them. So in our interviews, we have to give this feedback back to the company, saying, look, this is where your teams are telling us how they like to work. Because it's before COVID, it was very standard, but now we have to really question back to each individual, how do they work and why they find more productive to come to the office.
I would like to add something to that. I think that's a really good point. One thing that I've noticed when we are designing ourselves, so you're talking about the end users that are a really diverse group of people with all their own different opinions about things. But if you then have a group of designers that are extremely diverse as well, so you've got men and females, you've got younger and older, you've got people from Saudi Arabia, from Europe, maybe from China, maybe from Japan, maybe from Africa, you get this mix of unbelievably diverse ideas. And I think if you put that in front of you're right next to the different end users and different stakeholders, I think you're going to have absolute fireworks going on in terms of design. I don't know how your design teams look, but the diversity that I'm just describing is the diversity I find in our own office, which I really enjoy, because there's sometimes so funny ideas coming through from the various individuals and from the various nationalities. It's very exciting to see the different points of view.
And as well the day on how do they interact during the day, how they arrive, people that want to arrive, grab a coffee, talk for 5 minutes before they sit down, then do some 2 hours productive time, then have a break and talk again. So the journey of the day as well we didn't talk about, and that's why I really like the well standards, because what are the opportunities to eat together, what type of food is offered in the vicinity of the offices. So that's why I'm very interested, and I'm glad we didn't talk about sustainability, because that has nothing to do with sustainability, but the well standards of how the elements that you did need throughout the day are represented in the workspace.
And I like that you mentioned building standard, because obviously, yes, when you talk about the LEED certified buildings, LEED certified offices, but as you said, the standard looks at a human inside the space, not just the space itself. I'm just mindful of time, so I would still like to kind of open up discussion with our audience and just to see, okay, we do have a few questions, so if we can get the mic here in front and then one question in the back. Yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your speech. One of the issues for the survey in the first stage that most of the companies or portion of the companies, they don't allow their other employees to speak up because they are afraid the designer will not be able to satisfy everyone. So they just want to achieve what head boards thinks is right for the companies. So they try to eliminate employees' opinion. So I think here comes us as designer. We do like observation and to collect our own analysis, especially if there is an existing office and they are moving to new buildings.
But do you not think that's a massive missed opportunity?
It is.
Because there could be some really good ideas with people that maybe are not so senior or are very, but are very creative. Definitely. And have wonderful ideas.
And it happens like some clients, they come for us, they finish already the fit out and just new. But people, when they come to the office, they say it looks like hospital because it's full white. It's amazing for taking photos, but it's not good for the people to live in. So it has an advantage and disadvantage, and it's very challenging. So if you manage to do it with the project, that is the best scenario. So I salute you for that. And there is one challenge that happening here in Riyadh is, despite the different culture between foreigners and locals, between locals themselves there is diversity. Riyadh offices, before it was only for Riyadh people. Recently, 5 years ago, it's Riyadh offices is for Riyadh and Jeddah people. Jeddah people was different than Riyadh people, and now recently foreigners are out. So this is even locally between different cities, different regions. There is big differences, and I believe it's very challenging, yet it's fun to do. So I salute you all for that. Well done, guys.
It's very nice that you mentioned that. Actually, I've noticed that as well. And it's funny that sometimes you ask Saudis, have you ever been to Al Ula, or have you been to Tabuk, or to and they go, no, and no, they're quite tribal in a way. They're almost like staying within their own place, their province there.
And can be significantly seen in the females. Like the females' attitudes in the office is different than people in Jeddah, people in Riyadh. The way they walk onto the office, the way they carry their own bags, they need a place where they put their own bags. The way they group during the lunch break is different from different regions, which is interesting to look for.
Yeah,
and as you said, it's a missed opportunity if you don't pick up on that and have those conversations as well.
So. Yeah.
So we had one more question in the back.
Hello, my name is Isabel. I'm based in Dubai and I've been living in this area for 17 years now. My love for this area started in 2005 when I attended the Intelligent Building Middle East Conference in Bahrain. And I saw a lot of great ideas there and a lot of great innovative ideas to create special facades to improve the internal work atmosphere of buildings and offices. Unfortunately, I did not see a lot of these wonderful ideas being implemented in the UAE. So is there any ambition for Saudi Arabia to become a role model of sustainable and intelligent building? I can talk out of experience. I've just worked for 4 years in in an office with a very terrible internal climate. If you sit next to the window, you boil. If you sit inside the building, you freeze your butt off. What is your gentleman's idea and about Saudi Arabia having this great opportunity now to become a role model of intelligent and sustainable building technologies?
It's a very good point what you're raising. I've noticed we've just been involved with the ICD Brookfield building in Dubai, which is in the IFC. It's a beautiful building designed by Foster and Partners, and we were the lead consultant on it, helping them through concept and schematic design, and then taking over design during detailed design construction documentation. We were helping them through that process right in the beginning, and right from the start it was clear that this had to be a LEED platinum building. And this was going to be the very, very first LEED Platinum building in the DIFC area. And the client was talking about the additional cost that it was going to cost, to pay for that, for all the things that are going in there. And this client was very, very smart, and he realized that, okay, let's now not, the problem in the UAE, there's always value engineering. And all the nice things that we have in the beginning, there's no money for it in the end, so they're all being taken out. So the LEED certification goes from LEED Platinum, let's just do LEED accreditation only. And it's a really missed opportunity, because I'll tell you what happened. We finished the building, it got accredited LEED Platinum, and all the floors were rented out to really large international practices that all had sustainability very high up there in their company policies. And all the floors were rented out except for the 2 top floors, where there's going to be a signature restaurant. And you can imagine, with all these amazing international brands paying premium money per square meter for that office space, for that LEED Platinum building, they are really, really happy to be in that building. And to be honest, I think if anybody is smart, they go and say, guys, let's not look at that additional cost, because the return on investment is going to be so high, we're going to be able to really demand, and especially with all these international companies coming into Riyadh at the moment, please stop this value engineering stuff and understand the value you're going to create for these big international practices. They will come, and you will be able to get incredible rental returns, because the quality of the office spaces that are here in Riyadh at the moment are actually quite poor, and there is a shortage of it. So this is the right opportunity to do exactly like you're saying, doing it absolutely right.
And as everybody aware, climate change is not happening in 50 years. It's happening now, and it has been happening for already quite a while. So I hope you as architects can convince your clients to spend the extra money and be more mindful with resources, water, electricity. I know that in Dubai all this is very cheap and is very affordable in contrast to Europe. So I would love to see Saudi Arabia become a role model in energy efficient construction, which also then has benefits for the people living in these buildings.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Time is running out.
There's one more thing I'm optimistic about. Of course, there's a lot to learn from the UAE for Saudi, but there is also tremendous difference in dynamics too. In the UAE, the local population ratio is around lower than 20%, which is significantly different than the situation in Saudi. Dubai was closer to building from scratch. It was the whole city was built around finance. It was more reliant on foreign investment. It had to be built really quickly with global trend, etc. Now, building in Saudi is significantly different than them because there is more here already ahead of the developments. There is stronger heritage built environment, and there's more to learn from and add upon. So a contemporary way of building sustainably is extremely expensive, and it's really hard to convince the clients to pay premium for that. You try the argument of return on investment. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But building sustainably using heritage building techniques is very cheap and proved very successful because people have been living here for centuries under the scorching sun without getting cancer or without dying of thirst. There are very clever ways of building if you just don't opt for skyscrapers everywhere, and then 20-25 years later, how do we turn this city into a walkable one? Well, you should have thought of that 25 years ago. Now, Saudi Arabia has that chance because there is already a very almost healthy built environment to improve and to learn from. So I think it has a head start on things in that regard. And I see a lot of very thoughtfully planned out developments like Diriyah building on heritage and learning a lot
All
from
of it,
heritage building techniques and all urban design concepts, which will end up being hopefully both socially, financially, and environmentally sustainable. So I'm more optimistic in Saudi than I am in the UAE.
Can I add one thing to that? I don't want to talk sustainability because I don't think it's the wrong place in the GCC. It makes me sad when you go to Singapore, Australia, Europe, to see where we are here. I think there has to be a common goal between government, developers, doing it together. I don't think Dubai is there yet, neither is Saudi. I thought sometimes that it would be good to, I've seen it in Europe, that buildings have, like the cars, have ratings, and you can relate to it and say, well, I'm in the D or M rating, so this building is not performing. So how do you explain to tenants, to workplace, that your building that you are going to rent is not going to be good or is not working well? So is shaming the landlord or shaming the person that is going to design and build this building and saying this is not good enough? But it has to go together with a higher goal from a country or pushing it together. GCC is not doing it, and hopefully we have to do better.
We need serious policy making, and we need to invest on it.
And just to wrap up today's discussion, as Bart, you said, time will tell whether it's coming from the global corporates that are willing to open their headquarters here, and they will be pushing that agenda for getting those premium buildings that are LEED Platinum or LEED Gold certified as well. Yesterday we had a discussion as well with some of the panelists who are based in Riyadh, being very optimistic that in 5 years from now we will see a larger influx when it comes to LEED Platinum, LEED certified buildings in Saudi. And building standard as well.
Which is really interesting, because it's about the end users there.
Yeah, so let's hope in 5 years we'll have a bit of a different discussions than today as well. I'm just mindful of time, and I just want to thank to our panelists for really joining us for this insightful discussion.
Thank you.
And for audience for asking questions. And